Let's get started. I'm going to introduce Jane, and I think I know this topic is so important and one that's not always easy to talk about. So we are going to really just go through, or Jane's going to go through all that you need to know about advanced care planning. So I'm going to introduce Jane, and if everyone can just be on mute until we open it up for conversations, that would be great for background noise. Jane Markley is a business and healthcare executive with extensive experience in clinical care, ethics, quality improvement, and health IT. She founded M. Jane Markley Consulting to help individuals, families, providers, and hospitals and other healthcare organizations to put in place advanced care planning for themselves and their loved ones. In addition to her consulting work, Jane is a featured speaker who has presented regionally, nationally, and internationally. Jane serves on the Maryland State Advisory Council on Quality Care at the End of Life, a position she was appointed to by Governor O'Malley. Jane is a Life Fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives and a charter member of Advanced Care Planning International. She is a past president of National Capital Healthcare Executives. She also is an assistant professor of psychiatry at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences in Bethesda, Maryland, training the next generation of physicians in ethics and advanced care planning. Jane is the author of Advanced Care Planning Advocate, So You Do What? And co-author of Heart and Soul, Effective Advanced Care Planning Provides an Intervention Model and National Assessment of Living Wills and Do Not Resuscitate Orders. She holds a BS in nursing from DePauw University and a master's in education in human services organizations from Boston University.
No.
Jane, thank you so much for being here with us tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, enough. If I'd known it was going to be that long, I didn't realize you had all that information.
Well, I took what I could, and I thought that's
enough.
A lot of good stuff.
I'm just like each one of you. That's all I am. Good evening. It's really good to have all of you here tonight. As you know, I've been asked to talk about advanced care planning, which is a process that is beneficial to every person in America and abroad. Excuse me just a second. I have a pet therapy dog who wants to talk. So I'm going to try to keep him quiet. Yeah, it is beneficial to everybody in America and overseas. I work overseas as well. This having an advanced directive is important for everyone. I work with young people. I work with old folks. I work with people who are totally healthy and others who are terminally ill. It doesn't matter where you are on life's spectrum. Being prepared is something you can and should do now. As I'm sure you are well aware, life is fragile and tomorrow is not guaranteed. One key: how to live well as you can for as long as you can. Let's see where you stand today. There will be ample time for questions and answers as we go along. At the end, I will share a reference page with you, and Stephanie has an electronic copy of that I'm sure she can share with you as well, so that you don't have to write down internet addresses or any of that kind of stuff while we're chatting. You can use it as a reference point for when we're done. First, however, I'm going to provide a quick summary on what advanced care planning is, so that we're all on the same page in that term. And I'm going to talk to you about why it's important to you, your healthcare team, and your loved ones, and talk about how to document your preferences, and then we'll dive into your questions. So keep your questions coming, keep thinking about them, and we'll work forward through them as soon as we get to the Q&A. Let's see if I can get there. So first, and those people who are blocking themselves, if you can unblock for a second, I want to see a show of hands. of how many of you think you already have a plan done and dusted, written, ready to go, and you're here, but you really already feel like you've done the work. Well, there's a couple of you out here who feel like you have. Well, that's good. And that's going to be part of what we're going to talk about today, because if you already have the plan, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot for yourself to think about. Have you done everything that you need to have done in order to make sure that that plan is going to work for you when the time comes? So have you had the conversation? Have you shared the plan with others? Do you know where it is? And do other people know where it is? If you don't have a plan, that's okay too. It's not too late until it is. And once it becomes too late, sometimes you can't recoup. So it's important to get it done early, so that you can be prepared. So what is advanced care planning? Let me see if I can get that. There's a definition from the National Institute on Aging, which is a great, again, reference source for you as you put your plan together. I'll read it quickly for those who may not be able to see it as well. Advanced care planning involves learning about the types of decisions that might need to be made, considering those decisions ahead of time, and then letting others know about your preferences, often by putting them in an advance directive. There are other ways that it can be done. Your physician can write an order in your chart based on what you've told them. But to have an advance directive is something that's portable, you can take with you, and you don't have to go through everything every time you go to a new provider or a new healthcare system. Now, let's get started. I encourage everyone to have the conversation and give the gift. First, you have the conversation with yourself. This is probably one of the biggest challenges for people getting started. Nobody wants to think about this. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to dwell on it. But you need to have a conversation with yourself to find out what is important to you. What are your basic beliefs and values? What makes you tick? Have a conversation also with your healthcare provider and your health team to find out about your health and the realistic trajectory that you can expect based on your personal health and life. You learn about the medical alternatives for you and understand some of the medical jargon. I know when we get into the hospital and healthcare system, I'm a nurse by profession, and I know I use acronyms and terms that the layperson doesn't necessarily understand. So these are all things that it helps to get a bit more knowledgeable about as you get ready to write and develop your advance directive. Then talk with your loved ones. You're talking with your loved ones to share with them what you think you believe in, what your basic beliefs and values are, those things you've just had the conversation with yourself about. Talk to them. The purpose of talking to them is not to get them to change your mind about what you want. And some people will spend many hours telling you you've made a bad decision. You need to do something else. You need to do what's best for you. First, you have to figure that out. And it may change as time goes on, and that's perfectly all right. That's the beauty of an advance directive. It can be changed. If something changes in your healthcare situation, your diagnosis changes, you're having more problems than you did before, and your life has changed, those are all key indicators that it's time to take a look at what you've written and make sure it's still current. Plans can be changed on a dime and fairly easily if you've got your plan already done once. I encourage everybody to take a look at it at least once a year, if not more often. Again, all depends. That's why we have National Healthcare Decisions Day, which is on the 16th of April. Anybody have an idea why it's on the 16th of April? What goes together? Death and taxes. The two things we can't avoid in life. And so we try to do it on the 16th. You know, you've obviously got to do your taxes, but on the 16th, your taxes should be done. And it's now time to think about your own personal life. And has anything changed in your life that would require you to make a change in your advance directive? And the beauty of it is you can do that yourself. There's no requirement for you to use a lawyer to do an advance directive. It can be done outside of the law office, and therefore you don't have to pay money to do it again. So think about that as you move through. Having an advance directive and having had the conversations with your loved ones about what it is you want or don't want as far as care is concerned gives them the information that they need. And that's why I call it a gift. It helps them when the going gets tough to know how to advocate for you and know how to support you through whatever you're going through, whether it's a motor vehicle accident, whether it's a cancer diagnosis, whether it's a stroke. There are many times in your life you may be faced with the fact that you cannot speak for yourself. That may change. You may be able to speak for yourself again later, but sometimes the answer is no, that doesn't come back. So having this information shared with your loved ones so that they can help you through these times is wonderful. It is a gift that you give them because they don't know what they don't know. They may know you, they know you socially, they know you personally, but if you've never had this kind of a conversation with them, they're not going to know how to help you when the going gets tough. Knowing about your preferences and how you tick is a gift you give your loved ones so that they aren't guessing. And when something untoward occurs, they will know how to direct the healthcare workers and the system to care for you in the way that you wish to be cared for. You will have given them that gift so they are prepared and know what to do. Just like we plan extensively for so many other things in our lives, we know that young women plan ad nauseum for their wedding. We know that people plan for children and for going to school and other life activities, like even taking a trip. We spend hours poring over the travel manuals as to see where we want to go and what we want to do. And that's fun stuff. But this is something that's probably going to affect you in one way or another somewhere during your life, if not once, at least several times with your loved ones. So it's important to plan ahead because it is something that you will face, and having a plan in place will make it easier for everyone. Once you have your plan in place mentally and have considered your wishes, it's time to put it all down on paper and document it. So let's touch base here briefly with the advance directive document. The document is not the be all and the end all, because the conversation really is that. But the beauty of the document is it moves with you and it provides other people a little insight into what your preferences are. Here's some information about it. An advance directive usually includes a living will and a durable power of attorney for healthcare. There's different terms used for different things, so it gets a little confusing for some people because that person can be called a healthcare agent, a surrogate, a proxy. I mean, there's lots of different terms depending on where you are in the country. But just keep in mind that the durable power of attorney for healthcare is the person who who's allowed legally to make decisions for you if you are no longer able to make them for yourself. If you're still able to make them for yourself, this person has no control over your healthcare at all. It's only if you can no longer speak for yourself. This is different from the regular durable power of attorney. That is what I call the durable power of attorney for financial purposes. They're the people who can move your funds, can pay your bills, can sell your house, can do all sorts of financially related activities. You should have both. It can be the same person, but it does not have to be the same person. But those two jobs are an important positions that need to be documented for anyone moving forward through life. So, what is a living will? A living will identifies your desires for medical treatments, both for them and against them. In other words, if there are things you want, this is the place to put them. If there are things you don't want, this is the place to put it. It gives directions to, I just love finding an advance directive when I'm caring for patients, because 99% of the time someone comes in through the door and you're a nurse and you haven't got a clue anything about that patient except what you've got in front of you. And if you have in front of you a living will, you have a better chance of understanding what makes that person tick, what they're like, what their expectations are, what their goals and beliefs are. So it provides directions for those of us in the healthcare world. It provides directions for your caregivers and for your family and friends as well. It addresses key issues. It can address, I mean, some people write a living will and say, I know that my friend Susie Schwartz knows everything about me. We've had long conversations. She'll know what to do when the time comes, and I want her to make decisions for me, which would be the next page, but I trust her to make all my decisions. So they don't put a whole lot of information here in the living will because they've deferred to someone else to make their decisions for them. And that's fine. It all depends on what your relationships are with the people that you're going to be putting down for the durable power of attorney. But other key areas that you can address are life support treatment, resuscitation orders, feeding tubes. And these are the things you need to talk to your doctor about ahead of time so you understand what that means, because I guarantee you that everybody who watches television has a misunderstanding about CPR or cardiopulmonary resuscitation. It is not as it's portrayed in the movies or in the television. 7% of people who have a cardiac arrest while they're in the hospital survive to walk out of the hospital in good shape. What you would call good shape. 7%. That's in the hospital. It's very, very rare. We do some nasty things when we give cardiopulmonary resuscitation because that's what it takes to get the heart restarted. So you need to understand it so that you have a better appreciation of what decisions you're going to make regarding it. And that's where your physician or healthcare provider comes in. It is the documentation of your desires. And all those desires should have been something you've talked to your loved ones about while you're processing this, while you're doing this documentation. Definitely to your healthcare agent, and I encourage everyone to have 3 healthcare agents. And that they're not a threesome who makes a joint decision. They are a first, second, and third in line to make decisions. And why you need 3 is if the person who you make as your healthcare agent is the person who is in the car with you when you get 2 blocked out on the highway, they're probably not going to be in any condition to help you out. So you'll need a secondary person to help. Some people like to use their children who are, posted in the military in Japan. And no, it's doable from a distance, but it's certainly not the ideal. So have 3 people in mind as you go through this. So you write down what it is you want, and then you choose a healthcare agent. This is the critical activity, because this is the person who will make decisions for you when and if you can no longer make them for yourself. And picking a person, you may go into this whole process saying, oh, I know who it's going to be. It's going to be my spouse. Well, it doesn't have to be your spouse. And many times it shouldn't be your spouse because they're pretty close to the event at the time it happens and may not be able to make decisions the way you would want them made, which was the case of my mother. When I first started learning about this some nigh on to 50 years ago, my mother gave me her advance directive and said, I want you to be my healthcare agent. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't learn about this in nursing school. Let me do some brushing up here. And I said, why me? And she said, well, I don't think your father can do what needs to be done if something were to happen to me. She was right. He couldn't. She said another reason was you have a healthcare background, and I think you'll understand what's going on a lot better than your brothers will. And she said, I'm also not sure that they could do what I want done. And we'll never know because they were never in the equation. But picking people to do this is critical because they need to be ready, willing, and able to do it. As I say to people, if your person you want to be your healthcare agent is in the hospital more often than you are, probably not the best choice. They could be third in case they're available, but they need to be ready, willing, and able to do this. They need to understand what it is you want or don't want, as the case may be. And the key point, and this was my mother's point, that person needs to be able to advocate for what you want, not what they might want. And that's sometimes difficult for people who are very close to the situation to make a decision on. So it's having the conversation and giving the gift. And I'm going to open it up to questions now before I go off and finish off. I have very little left to speak to. I can speak to all sorts of depth to all the stuff we've already covered briefly, but I wanted to give you all the chance to weigh in and ask questions that are meaningful to you and that help you understand what it is, help you get answers to your questions rather than me just talking on for 45 minutes or so.
So I'm going to jump in here. I'm Patricia Dubroff, and I've been working with Stephanie on bringing you great speakers like Jane, experts in the field. I'm with Assisting Hands Home Care, but I work with a lot of families every day. And it's one of the things we actually ask as part of our onboarding is, do you have an advance directive? Because it's really important for our caregivers to know what the choices are. As Jane said, it may not be a hospital situation, it may be a home situation where you need an extra help because you've had surgery or you're doing chemo or radiation and you really need an extra pair of hands at home. But it's still important for that person to understand you as a whole person. And it's really wonderful when we can help a family create the advanced encourage them to create an advanced directive or advanced planning so that the whole family is kind of presented with this concept of, oh, this is what mom really likes. And I'll just tell you a funny story, but when I turned 50, I had a colonoscopy, right? We all love those. So, I went with my girlfriend, took me and, as my designated driver. And I'm in the recovery room and I'm under these wonderful warm blankets and I'm just so happy and I'm in La La Land. And all of a sudden I hear my friend's voice saying, Patricia, you have to wake up. They need the bed. Get out of here. We have to get you up. I was like, no, I'm really cozy. I don't want to go anywhere. So, it's like you need an advocate, right? You need somebody there who's going to speak on your behalf. And so she said to them, look, give her 5 more minutes. She's just slow coming out of the anesthesia or whatever. And I was really grateful that she was there because I was still gone. Apparently it took longer for me. So what is it that you came to this meeting today? What kind of questions do you have about advanced planning that Jane can help you answer today, or maybe just pose more questions for you, but at least have that conversation? Don't all jump in at once. So there's somebody.
Hey,
Roxanne.
Roxanne. There we go. Hello. So I'm coming to this because up until now I've been relatively healthy, and so I haven't really thought about doing this. And I guess I'm not really sure what the first place to start is. I wrote down what you were saying about how you can have an advance directive charted by your doctor, you don't need a lawyer. But like for a living will, or durable power of attorney, are there like forms online that you can just find these forms, fill them out, maybe get them like, I don't know, what is that called?
They don't need to be notarized.
Notarized, thank you.
They do not.
I'm like the stamp. You can see me doing the stamp.
Yep.
Right. So like,
Good question.
or is it just something that you write it up and, hope everybody honors it? I don't know.
No, you don't want to wing it. Let's put it that way. There are thousands of forms out there, and that is daunting to people. What I recommend is one of three forms. There is the state form of Maryland. I'm assuming everybody's from Maryland. I may be incorrect in that, but if you're from Virginia, they also have a state form. Every state has their own form, and that's fine. Very legalistic writing. And some people want the legalistic writing, and some people say, oh, it just blows my mind with all these he shalls, she shalls, it's just it's too daunting. So there are two others that are excellent. One is called 5 Wishes. Again, the state form is on the reference page that I've given you. The 5 Wishes is also on the reference page. 5 Wishes is what's called the living will with the heart and soul. It's very user-friendly. It speaks to 5 different wishes. The first wish is who you want to be, your healthcare agent, your durable power of attorney. And the second one is your living will piece. Okay, that an advance directive includes both of those. But 5 Wishes has 3 others. And I'm not going to remember the titles, but they're more of what my husband affectionately refers to as the touchy-feely things. I think the one that most of my women friends who use the term say is their number one. I want you to pull all those long hairs that are on my chin so that they don't, I'm not embarrassed by having all these long hairs on my chin. I like my feet tucked in under my covers. And some other people say, oh my gosh, don't do that. I'll go frantic. I need my feet out of the covers. It's the personal things. And that's what makes it more of a personal document than the legalistic one. The third one is
follow-up question is just where you provided those. Sorry.
Okay, the third one is my directives, which for those people who are big into electronics, it's a great tool to use. You do it online, and it's fairly user-friendly, and it takes you through the process of it and deals with all the requirements for an advance directive. For those people who have a state form or a 5 Wishes form or a hospital form or a religious form or any other form, one of the pushes that I'm doing right now is encouraging people to upload those when you're done, and if you have not done it on My Directives, go to My Directives and upload what you have done to My Directives. Now, why? That seems like a double effort. And it is in some respects, but you're not redoing your form. Your form is the form you do initially, and that's your one. And by putting it up into My Directives, one of the things that the state of Maryland has done is develop an interface between My Directives and the state's system called CRISP. Chesapeake Regional Information Systems platform. And what that allows is if you have a Maryland address and you upload your documents, either do them on My Directives or upload them to My Directives, then your advanced directive is available to any healthcare system in Maryland. So if you,
and I was just going to add to that. Go ahead, finish your sentence. I'm sorry.
If you're up in, Gaithersburg and you end up having an accident down in Carroll County, they're going to be able, when you hit the hospital, to pull your name up, and it's going to provide your advanced directive directly to them there. So,
and I would just like to say that Jane was a huge advocate for this to happen, and worked tirelessly to make this an ability, something that we could all appreciate and use. So it's a wonderful system. The other thing that's really great about it is that it sends you a message, an email every year, and says, hey, it's time to look at your advanced directive. Take a quick look, check through, make sure everything's the same. Or maybe you need to change something. I just recently learned about some burial practices that I hadn't heard of before. Maybe that's going to change something that I have in my directive to my family. Somebody else, there's, new medicine out there for a particular thing that I was most concerned about. Maybe I want to change my advanced directive. It's so easy to use. If you can, if you're used to doing stuff online, it's a piece of cake. It walks you right through the process. 5 Wishes is lovely. And I actually have those like as booklets. So if anybody wants one mailed to them just to thumb through, I know some people are more visual like me and like to do that. I'm happy to do that too. I can give them to Stephanie and she can get them to you. But don't hesitate to use My Directives. It's a fantastic program and it really will help you down the road. God forbid something happens.
Let me segue in here with one other thing. No matter which tool you use, always make copies of the advanced directive to give to the people with whom you have spoken, particularly all the people you identify as healthcare agents, because if you're somewhere else, they might need it. It will remind them of what it was that you said. The document is good. A copy of it is as good as the original. And you'll always make a list of those people to whom you've given the document so that when you make that change, whether you change your healthcare agent or you change what you prefer for care, when you make the change, you make sure that you get an updated copy to everyone. When we're in the hospital, if we run across 2 advanced directives on the same person, we always take the one that is most currently dated. That is the driver as to which one we use. Roxanne, you had a question. Did I cover it?
At the beginning of the answer to my question, you said you provided some things.
So I have a reference
resources.
In fact, I can probably, there it is. There's the reference page.
Oh, thank you.
And that's what Stephanie's going to send out to you or provide to you in some manner. American Bar Association has got great information on how to do advanced care planning. They're very supportive of it being done by the individual and not necessarily going through the lawyer. Of course, they believe they're spending a huge amount of effort training their lawyers to do this well. Some of them do, some of them do not. Every person's different, but the American Bar Association is trying hard to get them to understand all the permutations of this rather than just filling out a document. Conversation Project, very helpful in helping you understand how to do an advanced directive. Engage with Grace is a one-sided, one-page, one-slide program that just gets you started. 5 Wishes, I've mentioned already. The Maryland Advanced Care Healthcare Directive and My Directives that we talked about. There's the National Institute on Aging, which had the first quote that you saw earlier. And then Prepare is another tool out of California, has websites and videos to help you develop your own advanced directive. But the three documents are 5 wishes, the state document, and my directives. Other questions? Yes, Alistair.
Hi, Jane. I was just wondering, in terms of the living will, how you take into account time? I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a living will that says, I do not want to be fed through a tube.
Mhm.
And your agent knows that, yes, you will need to be fed through a tube for possibly a week or 10 days as a result of the condition you have. But you've already put in your living will, I do not want to be fed through a tube. It suggests to me that you have to think not only about a fixed point in time, but also over an extended period of time. What would it mean if you were fed by a tube for 6 months or for that length of time? Could you speak to that issue?
I'd be happy to. It's an excellent question, and one that bothers a lot of folks. You can do, again, if you've had good conversations with your healthcare agent, you can explain to them that you're fine with a tube if it's only 10 days, or, frequently with cancer, the head and neck, there's a reason to have a tube while we're working to try to get rid of the cancer in the head and neck and fix that problem, so to speak. And putting a tube in will allow that area to rest and keep you fortified and good nutrition until that process is complete, and then we can take the tube out once you can eat again. There are other times, and again, this is all part of that conversation you have with your loved ones. You can say in your advance directive, I want for a short-term fix, I'd be happy to have a tube, realizing that I want it out as soon as possible. For a long term, if I am in dementia, for example, that's another big problem. I don't want to be fed through a tube ever. Okay, then that's why it's important that your healthcare agent knows what it is that you want and understands has had that kind of a conversation with you about what it is. And then it's up to them to be at the time to know you well enough to be able to make decisions on the fly, because there is no way that we can ever we can never communicate to our loved ones all the possible things that might happen or might be needed at somewhere down the line. And that's why knowing the person's basic beliefs, values, preferences, the way you tick is important, because that if you know the way they tick, they can go ahead and make decisions for you based on your ticking instead of somebody else's ticking. Does that help?
Yes, thanks very much.
Okay, right, yeah. It's
I can add in oh, sorry, go ahead. Same
with trachs. I mean, there's a lot of people who say, I don't ever want to have a tracheostomy. Okay, well, again, if it's a short-term fix, that's temporary, that's one thing. For the long term, that's another thing. You have to remember that once you have a tracheostomy, or once you have a ventilator and you're on a vent for 2 weeks, the doctors are going to start circling, going, okay, 2 weeks is long enough. You cannot have a tube down your throat for more than 2 weeks, because you start to damage the tissues in your throat and in your mouth. So they're going to want to push for a tracheostomy, which is a long-term fix for that. Well, knowing that is helpful in advance, because there are some people who would never want a tracheostomy, and if that's their preference, that's their preference. But sometimes when you're in the emergency room, you don't know what you're going to want, because things are moving so fast. So having an idea of whether a short-term fix is okay or not is the same type of thing as with a feeding tube. Patricia, what did you have?
Yeah, you actually touched on it in the second sentence. I was just going to say, you know, sometimes your advanced directive healthcare person is going to be dealing with some very emergency kind of situations, and it may have to be things are moving so fast, and they're telling you that, you know, you're going to be okay, so you go for the option one, but then 2 days later you realize, you know what, that may not have been the best option, so we're going to change direction because I know what she would have wanted in that case. And it's, you know, it's a terribly difficult place to be as a healthcare director, as a healthcare advocate. And so, you know, you need to have those conversations with that person. It's not something you just haphazardly put in somebody's email. I made that mistake with my own kids. I did the voice your choice, and it automatically, I didn't realize this, so FYI, it automatically sends an email to the people in your list and says, oh, you've just been named a healthcare representative for Patricia Dubroff. And I'm like, oh, geez, I didn't have a chance to call them yet. I mean, we talked over the years, but I hadn't told them that I was actually making this happen that day and that they were going to get an email. So FYI, let them know before you start typing it all in and hit the go button.
That's why I specifically
kind of shocking.
Yeah,
but
that's why I specifically in my brief talk about having the conversation and giving the gift first before you document, because that happens with a lot of the electronic systems out there.
But it is very convenient, and they all really appreciated it. It was like, oh, this is so easy, and it frees me up to think about other things that I want to ask you about, how you want to be in case. So, you know, it really opens a conversation.
One other thing I want to mention is we're all talking about us, you know, people on the screen, and many of you are old enough to have children who are over 18. It's critical that you talk to them about this, not for your own sake, but not because of your own health, but because of their health. We are living much longer than ever before, and there are more and more instances of children dying before their parents. And if you remember back, the 3 women who caused advanced directives to come on the scene were all women under the age of 30 who had an untoward occurrence in their health and had never talked about it, had never shared their beliefs, and it became an international incident for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so these things can happen to the youngsters. I always tell parents before they send their kids off to college or after they graduate from high school off to a job somewhere else in the world, make sure they have an advanced directive that they complete and that they identify who that healthcare agent will be. Because if they're in, Colorado and they end up in the hospital, if they don't have a healthcare agent, you're not necessarily, as a parent, going to be getting a phone call. They have no requirement to call you. They do have a requirement to call a healthcare agent. And that healthcare agent that your youngster picks may not be you, but it's probably going to be somebody you know. So at least you'd know what's going on if something untoward occurs to them outside of the local district. I get approached weekly by people between the ages of 18 and 27 who say, I just saw my friend go into the hospital after an overdose, and I don't ever, I don't expect to overdose, but I don't ever want to see anything like that happen to me. And I want to have an advanced directive so I can make sure that my parents will know what's going on and I get the kind of care I want. So it's all age groups.
Yeah, Jane, I'm so glad you said that. Pretty much, within months of my 2 boys turning 18, we did advanced directives. And I think they were surprised, but
They
to
always
all the
are.
points you point out, and you started your talk with, you're never too young, you're never too healthy. And, we all have insurance for so many reasons, and we don't, think we're going to use maybe our life insurance or certain things, but we just have these things, in preparation, if something does happen. And also, to your point, we all are going to die. And I don't think that's something that we all, have really come to terms with. It's like, that's so far in the future, no matter how old you are. It's not an easy conversation, but having these documents in place are so important and helpful. And because we do them doesn't mean something bad's going to happen. Because sometimes I think that, whether we're superstitious or, just some magical thinking, which when we're feeling out of control is natural. But again, just how important this is. And you're making this so approachable with your talk, because that's also another obstacle in this.
Well, Stephanie, I'm glad you said that, because I think it's key. I have a colleague who had twin boys, and when they turned 16, she, went through all the training and got their licenses. But the day they turned 18, she pulled the car keys back from them and said, "Till you get your advanced directive done, I'm not giving you the car keys, because you're adults now and you need to make decisions for yourself." Needless to say, they were not surprised. They knew what their mother did. So within a week, they'd had enough conversations to be able to document and put their plans together. So yeah, good point.